this was a team I thought that our fan base could really get behind and be proud of.
Welcome into the Scarlet Shootaround podcast, following the beat of Husker basketball. Here are your hosts, Blake and Mike.
Nebraska holds serve at home, defending the vault, beating Ohio State 83-69. Hello, everybody, and welcome in again to the Scarlet Shootaround podcast. My name is Blake, here with co-host Mike. And Mike, how are you feeling after this nice win? 2 in a row. I think they say 3's a streak.
I think that you're right. That is what they say. Feeling pretty good. I love to give some historical. I haven't given a good historical stat in a while, so I'm going to pull one out real quick. That 15-5 through 20 games. Obviously, that's what 15 plus 5 equals. But this is the best Husker start since the 1990-1991 team. They were 18-2.
And what happened with that season, Mike?
That team ended up being a 3 seed in the NCAA tournament. We can end it there. It doesn't really matter what happened after that 3 seed. No, they ended the season ranked, I think, like 24th, 23rd. So, arguably the best team Nebraska's ever had. We, a couple episodes ago talking about Danny Nee and all that stuff. That was one of his teams. So, just a fun little historical factoid. Great start, obviously. And we're all here enjoying it. So, that being said, another chance, Big Ten road test coming up against a feisty Maryland team that I believe took down Iowa tonight. So we'll get into more of that later. But for now, big win over Ohio State.
So let's get into it, Mike. Obviously, the front runner and person that we need to talk about is Rink Mast. He goes for an explosive 34, 10, and 4. Going a whopping 13 of 17 from the field, 6 of 8 from three-point. That was a world-class career night for our Dutchman, Mike. He's leading the team and Big Ten five-mans with 3.1 assists per game as we sit here today. Who in the world saw that coming in October?
It's crazy. I didn't know he had the passing. Obviously, we can talk about the scoring all we want. I mean, the Dutch oven was cooking last night, right? 6 for 8 from 3. That's incredible. Hyper efficient 13 for 17. That's crazy to end up with that type of stat line. But yeah, the assists, it just makes him that much more dangerous when he gets the ball at the top of the key. If he can pass the ball on to some cutters and things like that, a la Derek Walker last year, just being able to facilitate others, just another dimension to his game. Like you said, in October, I'm not sure I would have believed you, but here we are witnessing it, and it's a beauty to behold.
Along with him, Mike, C.J. Wilcher had a very nice game, going for 16, 1, and 3, going 6 of 12 from the field, hitting 4 of his 7 3-point attempts. Mike, he is shooting 53% from deep in Big Ten play, and he's currently, while barely, but currently in the 50% field, 40% 3, and 90% free throw club coming off the bench. This guy has got to be your favorite for Big Ten Sixth Man of the Year.
I think he's got to be the 50-40-90 club. That's incredible. I don't care if you're a starter or a bench player. And it's not like CJ's on some, it's not like he's barely above the minimum. No, he's taken plenty of shots on the season. So great for him. It's kind of interesting. I think maybe he ate into a little bit of Casey's minutes this game, which is interesting. But when he's got the hot hand like that and he's cooking, the little 2-man game between Mast and CJ was pretty fun to watch.
And a less heralded but equally efficient night from Bryce Williams, going for 14, 7, and 4, going 5 of 9 from the field, hits 2 of his 4 3-point attempts. Again, really great night. He kind of gets overshadowed by what Mast and Wilcher were able to do, but Bryce Williams with 7 boards and 4 assists did a really nice job without being in the spotlight.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd ever say like a quiet 14-point, like 7 rebound night, but that's kind of what it was. Yeah, well, I mean, obviously when Mast is exploding for career highs and stuff, you kind of take a bit of a backseat, but super efficient game from him. I love to see him hit, 50% beyond the arc. Obviously the whole team shot amazing beyond the arc because they're at PBA and that's what they do when they're at home. But great game from him. I want to throw in, while we're just talking about a couple of guys, I said it last game. I said it the last couple of games now. I think, Eli Rice has been given really, really great minutes off the bench, and he came in for, 14 and a half minutes this game, and I think he did a great job. I think the defense continues to improve, and he's just kind of a spark. He gets to the line better than I think anybody else on the team, and I love to see that from Eli.
And Eli Rice, you mentioned, had 4 points, 3 rebounds, did not have an assist, made one of his 3 field goal attempts. Did play 14 and a half minutes. And Mike, it really appears like his role is growing and growing more as we progress into the season. I think his expanded minutes in this game may have played a role in replacing Juwan Gary and what he was trying to do. But Eli Rice was brought in. He continues, his minutes continue to increase and increase as we continue along in the season.
Yeah, I'm not sure I would have pegged him for having more playtime than Keisei Tominaga in any game this year, but that's what happened, this game. I mean, maybe it was by 20 seconds, but technically correct. So, but yeah, no, great game from him. I think he was plus 10. So doing it on both ends of the floor. If we're talking about plus minus, though, I think you can't go without saying, obviously, Rink Mast, when you score 34, that's going to help the plus minus. But the one that stands out to me when I'm looking at the box score is Sam Hoiberg, team high, tied for a team high with Mast at plus 23, but he scored 1 point. So that just tells you how big of a factor Sam has been on the defensive end.
And Mike, he has been one of our best defenders all season. He really helped lock down Thornton in the second half, again, as evidenced by his 23 plus minus with essentially no scoring. He did add 4 rebounds to his scoring total and made one of his 2 free throw attempts, which is where his 1 point stems. But he has really, really developed. And while we're talking about point guards, Mike, how about Jamarcus Lawrence? Only had 2 points on 1 of 6 shooting, so a little bit of an off night, again, shooting for the guy, but has 4 rebounds and 6 assists. His season field goal percentage, Mike, is down to 32%, but when you have a 6-to-1 assist-to-turnover ratio, especially in a guy that is continuing to learn that point guard position, you take it and you run.
Yeah, just overall, I think the team had, only 6 assists. I think that's lowest in the season, except for I think we had 2 against, I think maybe Duquesne earlier in the season. So great, all around by the team taking care of the ball. But I think Jamarcus did a really, really great job. As you mentioned, 6 assists. If you get a 6-to-1 assist to turnover ratio, that's pretty incredible. So love to see it. He's had a couple good games since, a couple good bounce back games since a little bit of a tough outing on the road trip between Iowa and Rutgers. So love to see that for him. And I hope he keeps, getting more comfortable handling the ball, assisting. Hopefully the shot starts to come a little bit more to him too. We'll see. But like I said, I think just a couple big bounce back games, maybe help the confidence a little bit before we hit the road again.
And Mast mentioned also in the postgame presser that they did some jumping tests, and he had tested better than he had, I think, since December, Fred had mentioned. So now that we're starting to see Mast get into his full health, Mike, I don't think we can expect 34 and 10 every night, but what do you think is a fair standard to expect out of our Dutchman as we progress forward?
Yeah. No, I think, I think the assists are going to continue to come for him, 4 in this game. I think that number stays around probably that area. I hope at least. And I think, double-digit points isn't out of the realm of possibility. Obviously, he has the whole tool set. If he's shooting as well as he did tonight, it's way more than just, 10 to 12 or whatever. But even just, knocking down a single 3, maybe 1 for 3 from beyond the arc, and then obviously he can cook inside a little bit. He definitely has the ability to use both hands and go both ways, which makes it tough to defend him down low. Yeah, no, I think double digit points, somewhere around, double digit rebounds isn't too crazy. I'm not going to call him for a double every night, but some 12 points every night with, add in seven rebounds, a handful of assists. I think that's well within the realm of possibility for what he can do.
And we've always talked about from game 1, when Mast is able to hit a 3 or 2 at the beginning of the game, you look at Kansas State, you obviously look at the second half of this one, it just expands the offense. And Mike, I believe I tweeted out, I don't know the exact number off the top of my head, but after the Huskers were down at, I think, the 12-minute mark, they closed the first half on like a 33-10 run or something along those lines, from down 9 to up 9. So amazing job from the Huskers after a relatively slow early start. And also of note, Mike, the Huskers won the rebounding battle 35-28 overall and 9-6 on the offensive glass. This is a huge point of emphasis against Ohio State, and they even won the second chance point 16-2. So what an effort, again, of a point of emphasis against a really good rebounding Ohio State squad.
I couldn't be more happy with it. I think the biggest concerns the last handful of games has been rebounding and turnovers. So to see them win the rebound battle, both overall and on the offensive glass, was huge. As we mentioned, only 6 turnovers for the team this game. That was also big. Yeah, obviously those are 2 giant points of emphasis going forward. I think that's kind of been our bugaboo. We've moved on from the free throw bugaboo, and now we have a turnover and a rebounding bugaboo. But as long as we can carry that on forward, carry that on the road, remains to be seen. We'll get a chance to see that coming up here. But that's the biggest thing for me is just if they can carry that forward.
So Fred was very complimentary of how not just, we got the win point blank period, but the fact that they were to maintain some momentum without getting too high or too low, as is almost the quote of the season, it appears. Very complimentary of the team in the postgame.
Yeah, it was so important after 2 tough road games to come back and take care of the vault, and our guys stepped up to the challenge. It was that Northwestern. That's a hard prep when you get back at 3 a.m. and have 2 days and have to play a 1 o'clock game. For us to find a way to bounce back and respond was huge. And now the challenge is, we got to find a way to play with the same type of intensity, the same type of grit when we go on the road on Saturday against a really good team that's hard to prepare for. Maryland does things that nobody else in our league does with their pressure and their different defenses. But we'll have a couple good days to prepare and put a game plan together, and hopefully we go out and execute.
And, Maryland, Mike, will cause their own problems as they do very well on the defensive side. Again, we'll break down that as we progress into the show. But what a fantastic effort from the Huskers. Another thing of note, he mentioned the turnover numbers were down. Northwestern, we talked about in the Northwestern preview, they emphasize the turnovers. Ohio State, not as much, but always good to see that turnover number go down no matter who the opponent is.
For sure. As you mentioned, it's not so much Ohio State's calling card to try to turn you over, but still just seeing the improvement. Basketball is a mental game as much as it is physical, so I'm sure it feels good for the team to see they can take care of the ball and, explode for 83 points. I'm sure that's going to help going forward, help the confidence a little bit.
And some team stats that stick out to me as we progress through the rest of the season that are really barometers that lead to whether we're going to have success or not in the win column. Huskers, Mike, are 11-0 when holding opponents to 70 points or less, and 10-0 when winning the rebounding battle. So it sounds like the formula is now there. You get to 70 and you hold the opponent under 70, obviously. And you win the rebounding battle, you're probably going to have a lot more wins than losses in the win-loss column there. And it seems like, Mike, just based on what we heard out of that post-game press conference in its entirety, the team seems very locked in for this Maryland trip. I think they've kind of put the high celebrations and the low defeats to the side, and I feel pretty confident about the team's mentality as we head out to College Park.
No, I agree. I think they definitely seem locked in. I think they're probably itching for their first road Big Ten win. Comes at a great opportunity to get a little bit longer rest. They're not on, a couple 2 to 3 days rest. They get a couple days to rest and recoup before they travel out to Maryland and see what they can do. I'm sure they're like I said, they're excited to get another opportunity to get that first Big Ten road win.
So we've shared our thoughts. Let's hear what the viewers had to share on Twitter.
So Husker fans, let's hear from you.
But before we do that, Mike, I believe you have a sponsor to share.
I do have a sponsor. This segment is brought to you by Tax and Business Consultants, providing all of the tax, accounting, payroll, and consulting that your business needs. They partner with you to specifically tailor strategy suited to you and your business. Committed to positive client outcomes since 1961, they have been relieving stresses related to taxes in all forms. Their offices are located in Blair, Columbus, and Lyons, so give them a call at 402-426-4144 or visit their website at www.tbc.tax. That is T as in Tominaga, B as in Bryce Williams, and C as in Coach Hoiberg.tax. Once again, that phone number is 402-426-4144, so give them a call and go Big Red.
Again, want to thank everybody over at Tax and Business Consultants, Brett and Kelly, for helping us out, get this thing off the ground from an advertising standpoint. If you or someone you know would like to sponsor the show, just have them DM us on Twitter or shoot us an email at scarletshootaround@gmail.com. All right, Mike, let's get into it. Starting us off, Evan Weekland, super fan of the show, says, so many players on this team can lead us to victory any given night. Obviously, tonight was all masked. Wow, these guys are fun. Really, he just kind of said it all. I don't know that there's a whole lot of compliment to what he just said, but the fact of the matter is, Mike, and he brings up the point, anybody on this team could explode. And Fred mentioned it in the postgame press conference as well. You don't know if it's going to be Alec that explodes for 16 points. We don't know if it's Mass is going to go for 34. Bryce Williams has gone for 25. Tominaga has gone for 30. I mean, what a fun team when you never know who that hero is going to be.
Definitely one of the more fun teams I can remember watching, especially after these last couple seasons. Definitely a lot more fun to watch this team. Yeah, the guys seem pretty locked in. They seem like they're having fun out there. And like you said, who knows who it's going to be. So you got to tune in to see who's going to pop off the next game.
Marcy Crotterville says, looking forward to taking the family to the Michigan game in February. Would love to rep a Scarlet Shootaround Pod sweatshirt. Release the merch, please. And great job with the podcast. That being said, if you want to just purchase a sweatshirt, I suppose we can do that. I'm running out of inventory here, so we're trying to reserve them for the giveaways as best we can. I was telling Mike off the air, we just had to reorder a couple more. I didn't expect to have to do that, considering I don't think I was expecting north of 20 wins this season, but here we are, which is a great problem to have. And then Purple Look Play says, Big Red needed this win. The men need to win all the home games possible. And Jake Oldenheis says, love the swagger of the Huskers tonight. They're starting to play like they know they're a pretty damn good team. And I think Fred has talked about this, and I know he's mentioned it in a presser before. Even after losses, some of those games were so close. Obviously, you look at Minnesota and Rutgers right out of the gate, but this team has the potential to be so good. And my mind dreams. I sent a text to our group chat this morning of the March Madness theme and what can all happen with this team. You don't want to get too far ahead of yourself, but it's just nice to soak in each and every win after so many consecutive years of just pure misery.
No, it's a blast to be, we're sitting here late January, last week of January, talking about March Madness, just to have a rooting interest. I mean, I'm interested in K-State games all of a sudden, and I'm interested in all these other games that'll help our strength, our record and everything, quad 1, quad 2, all that stuff. It's so fun to just be invested. Like you said, after the last couple of seasons has been a little bit of a slog being a Nebraska basketball fan. Good to finally get one and get excited and just be invested in what this team does every time they go out on the court.
Keisei Tominaga fan club said, he quoted himself saying, who is rinking their mast right now? And then he quoted that in a response to us saying, should I tweet this before every game? So I thought that was actually pretty funny. So props to him for that one. And then on a more serious note, Cam Childs 2 says, huge response from Mast. He's had a rough 3 games after that Purdue game, and we needed him tonight. Also, CJ is just somehow able to take the lid off for the team. We got cold for short stretches, then CJ would hit a tough shot, and then they would start falling. It was awesome to see. And, Mike, was there a bigger point in the game than when CJ had back-to-back threes off those inbound passes to extend the lead to 9? What an awesome moment.
Yeah, I honestly, I saw him make the first one. I looked down for a second. I look up, and he's making the second one, and I thought maybe the stream got, reset or something. There's the exact same shot, but no, incredible. He's been a flamethrower off the bench. He just comes in. Maybe he's just more comfortable on the bench, seeing, how he performed a little bit last year in the starting role compared to previous years coming off the bench. He just seems so comfortable when he gets out on the court. He's just oozing with confidence, and why wouldn't you be when you're shooting, I think you said earlier, over 50% from beyond the arc in conference play. Yeah, you get the ultimate green light if that's where you're at. So love to see it from him. Hopefully he can keep it up. I got the utmost faith that he'll keep his hot shooting going.
Husker Prod says, we are back. Great team win. Let's win on the road now. Chase Woodard says, not sure what to make of Mast. Looked like a real American superhero tonight, although he's Dutch. But he also bleeds so darn easily with the lightest touch almost every game, which what a weird thing. It's almost like you can put it on your bingo card that he's going to bleed. It's just like, I don't know how that ends up happening all the time. But Fully Husked says, someone else said it, but given my Twitter name, I think it's appropriate to steal. That game had me at full mast. Nice pun there. And then Whizbang Hoops says, I think everyone knows the story of that game, so no need to add to that. But I will say another dominant defensive performance by Sam. And we talked about it earlier, Mike. Sam is such a linchpin to this team, both from a defensive standpoint, from an energy standpoint, from a body on the floor standpoint. He is such he reminds me a little bit of like a Johnny Trueblood.
Yeah, classic two-way glue guy. No, he's locking it down on the defensive end. He's the first to the floor. He brings a lot of energy, does a lot of dirty stuff that obviously doesn't show up in the box score if you're looking at it right now, but they'll look at the end of the box score and see that plus 23, and that's where it shows up. So massive from him. Obviously, all the jokes about Mast and how he was cooking, and we love that. We love the fans and all their little comments. All those made me giggle reading through them. So love to see that. Hopefully we can have some more funny ones coming up for the next person that pops off.
Husker Power said, Rink Mast caught the Keisei flu. Dude could not miss. I'm having a ton of fun. Zach Jamar says, all you need to say is Rink Mast. Incredible night. After watching the postgame presser, I think these guys are in the right mental space. As we talked about, totally, fully agree. They can taste it. As Mast said, it's time to win on the road. I think they get it done in Maryland. Go Big Red. And Andrew Hansen says, this team has a lot of depth and can score from anywhere on the floor. Those 2 threes by CJ in the corner off inbounds plays were huge. Again, we just talked about it. Incredible moment there. Mast's performance was probably the best I have seen in PBA. Go Big Red. And Mike, let's just throw a random guy out there. Who is going to be your random pick to explode against Maryland, assuming we win the game?
Yeah, I'm really just itching for a Bryce Williams game where he just kind of goes off. He's been quietly getting double-digit points, and I think maybe it's time he's not so quiet. He gets to the hoop, gets to the mid-range, and knocks down a couple threes. I'd love to see a Bryce Williams just go off. And he's been rebounding amazing these last couple games, so maybe I wouldn't even, shout out maybe a Bryce Williams double-double. Who says no?
Jason Palmer says, didn't know we had Dirk Nowitzki on our team. Sam Hoiberg Fan Club says, this team, when they do the little things like rebounding and limiting turnovers, can be dangerous, like super dangerous, and it has shown tonight. Haley Krull says, Eli Rice gave some good minutes again, so shout out to Eli Rice, as we talked about. He's improving. Rink was a bucket tonight, having a ton of fun. And Aiden Trimble says, it's us versus us the rest of the way. We are good enough to win any game, including on the road. The guys just have to execute down the stretch. And Mike, I think that's what kind of we're talking about when we mention this team feels mature now. They feel like they've gone through the roller coaster, and Fred has finally stabled the ship, and the sentiment of never too high, never too low, in my mind, seems to be setting in with this team. I mean, where do you feel on a confidence scale 1 to 7? Because that, a historical inside joke of ours, 1 to 7 makes you critically think. 1 to 7, how confident are you as we head up into Maryland?
Out of 7, I'll call it like a 6. I think that's like an 84%. I don't know. So, or an 86 maybe. I'm trying to remember, but yeah, no, like a 6 out of 7. I love where this team's at. I think the last 2 games, as we've already talked about it ad nauseum, that the road losses in Iowa and Rutgers were tough, but to come home and do it against 2 pretty good teams, Ohio State's probably not to the caliber that Northwestern is, but 2 big wins, and another chance to win on the road. And I think they're hungry for it. I know I am as a fan to see them get it done on the road. And I think they have a great opportunity going forward here on the road against Maryland.
Mooney Mania says, good win, but I don't like our odds against Maryland on the road. Jenga Lowe's says, Mast is an awesome pickup. He's helped this team immensely this year, and I have no idea he was capable of dropping a 30-10 double-double. Move over Zach Edey. And I think historically, Mast had dropped 1 game of 30 points at Bradley. I think I saw that in researching tonight, but I don't quote me on that. Colin Summers says, the depth of this team is special, especially essentially won that game without Juwan Gary and Tominaga. Wilcher and Mast stepped up in a huge way on offense. Jamarcus and Hoiberg did it on defense. Go Big Red. Fantastic thought there. And then rounding it out, you have that Husker fan saying, if this team is riding hot without Gary, what do we do when he's healthy? And this is actually a conversation, Mike, that I really do want to have. When Gary comes back, obviously he's too important to not play. But is it going to be as simple as Rice starts to lose his share of minutes again, or is somebody else going to be the victim of some minute cuts?
I think, it's probably a little bit of a Rice, a little bit of a Josiah Alec, Gary's too good of a player to not get minutes and not see the floor. But seeing the guys step up without him, I think that's just that makes me feel all the more comfortable. If we ever get into foul trouble, if we ever need to go to another guy for whatever reason, these guys have just proven over these last handful of games that they're definitely more than capable of doing it. And I think that's probably going to help them in their own game, going forward, helping with especially Eli Rice. I always talk about development and see an actual game. The more minutes he gets, I think it's just going to be even better down the road, not only this season, but seasons to come. So I'll love to see that. But yeah, excited for Gary to get back. Hopefully he's healthy sooner rather than later. But good to see the guys hold it down without him.
Drew Urban says, happy for Mast after his tough night at Rutgers. Last 2 wins erased the Rutgers loss. Need to win one of the next 3 to hold serve, beat Whiskey at home, and thought should become not just making the tournament, but playing for a 5 seed or better with the schedule we have left. And Mike, I really do think we always talk about trying not to get too far ahead of ourselves, but assuming that we can actually go on to Maryland and get that big win, and we're kind of rotating pods now. Do you think, where would you set the barometer over the next 4 games with Maryland on the road, Wisconsin at home, Illinois, and Northwestern on the road? Out of those 4 games, what do you think is successful and what would hold serve in those 4?
I think 2-2 probably hold serves if you manage to, I'm assuming probably a win over Maryland and Northwestern. Not that that's a guarantee at all, especially on the road. Those are both road games, and we've seen how we perform on the road. But I think if you get, a win over a Wisconsin or an Illinois, you manage to go 3-1, even a 2-2 with a win over one of those 2, that's going to be another quad 1 win, just another feather in the cap for the resume, which will be just great going forward. So that's kind of how I see it. It's interesting. Yeah, I've been the king of one game at a time, but it's getting harder and harder not to look forward to this early February slate with Wisconsin and an Illinois matchup looming large. But they got to take care of business in College Park first.
Jacob Wright 27 says GBR from Orlando, Florida. I believe he was down at a work event down there. Tyler Worrell says Rinkmast was incredible. Let's just get that from him every night. But bench guys like Hoiberg, Wilcher, and Rice are playing great minutes right now. You can't speak enough to how well the bench has performed over the last couple games. Fantastic effort for those guys. Motai 24 says Nebraska ball - tourney team. As it sits right now, they definitely are a tourney team. Let's hope it stays that way. And finally, the winner of our Ohio State sweatshirt giveaway is Luke Heisler, who simply says, gotta win on the road now. So congratulations, Luke. We'll make sure that we get you a sweatshirt sent in the mail here very shortly. If you want to partake in the sweatshirt giveaway that we have anytime Nebraska gets a Big Ten win, make sure you follow us on Twitter at Scarlet Shoot Pod. We post a tweet after every single game saying, Huskers, what were your thoughts about X win or X loss? Be sure to share your thoughts to be included in our conversation. And there's nothing we love more than creating the conversation that we've generated around Nebraska basketball. So that being said, let's look into what Maryland brings to the table on the other side of the break.
You are listening to the Scarlet Shootaround podcast.
All right, Mike, so let's dive into Maryland a little bit here. They are 11-8 on the season, 3-5, actually 4-5 in conference after that win they just had against Iowa. My notes are a little outdated. Ken Palm, they check in at number 68. I don't know if that's concurrent. They probably went up a spot or two. Net ranking, they are 99th. This is a quad 2 game for both Nebraska and Maryland. They currently are tied for 9th in the Big Ten standings. Again, they probably went up a little bit. Let's just assume 7th. Again, we're recording this right after that game ended, so my data that I wrote this morning is a little bit off. Notable wins for them: number 9 Illinois on the road, 76-67. Number 108 UCLA on the road, 69-60. Number 80 Michigan at home, 64-57. And as we just mentioned, they beat Iowa, who I believe is in the mid 50s or low or high 40s by 2 points. I believe it was 69-67 tonight. Notable losses for the Terps include losing to number 147 UAB on a neutral court, 66-63. Number 135 Davidson on a neutral court, 64-61, and number 17 Michigan State at home in a nail biter, 61-59. Mike, so obviously they're coming off a pretty big win on the road at Carver Hawkeye. This team seems to be gaining a little bit of momentum here. Maybe what do you take away from the Maryland Terrapins?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing for me, we'll get into their players a little bit, but they kind of run a two-man game on the offensive end, but that's not really what they're known for. They're much like Rutgers. They're kind of very defensive focused. They're actually first in the conference in defensive efficiency. So they're going to be a tough go as far as that goes. The good news is that they don't shoot the ball well from three. And as we know, the Huskers are prone to give up the three and stop the paint inside. So that's kind of a good matchup from us. But yeah, like I said, it's a two-man game for them on the offensive end. Obviously, their star is Jameer Young, the 6'1" point guard. He's a senior. He's been around the block. He knows what to do in conference play. He's averaging over 20 points a game. And he's shooting, 34% from three. So he's definitely their best offensive piece. I think he's probably in the running for maybe an all Big Ten spot as he sits currently. He's had an incredible year. So that's going to be the big focus for the Huskers, to stop him. And interested to see how, I'm assuming it'll probably be Sam Hoiberg on him, probably one of our better perimeter defenders, or Jamarcus defending him. So big task for those guys.
And I think Fred actually mentioned in something that I heard or read that we're going to start with Bryce Williams potentially on him. So maybe expect to see a little bit of height on him, maybe help prevent his jump shot a little bit. Jameer Young averaging 21, 4, and 4 on the season. You mentioned 34% from three, only shooting 44% from the field. So maybe not as efficient as that stat line would lead you to believe. He was second team All Big Ten last year. As you mentioned, a lead candidate to probably be on the first team this year, as he is the third leading scorer in the Big Ten as we sit here right now. Another big piece for them is Julian Reese, a 6'9 junior, averaging 13, 10, and 1, shooting 52% from the field, has not attempted a three-pointer this year, but there's their second main scoring threat that they carry. He was an honorable mention guy in the Big Ten last year. He's averaging a double-double, and he had 24 and 15 against Penn State. He's probably one of their better defenders, as he averages 2.2 blocks a game and 1.2 steals a game. So between those two, expect most of the offense, and then throwing in on occasion will be their four guy, Donta Scott, the 6'8 senior, averaging 11, 5, and 1, shooting 43% from the field, 39% from three, which is a lot higher than I would have expected. Another honorable mention, all Big Ten guy that last year played pretty well. He brings a little bit of a perimeter threat to the Maryland Terrapins, and he's really just an all-around good player, Mike. So outside of those three, what do you say about their supporting cast? Does anybody stick out to you?
Yeah, I think the biggest note for me is Deshaun Harris-Smith. He's a four-star. He's a freshman. He's he plays a little bit of a tweener between a 2 and a 3, so he's kind of big for a shooting guard or smaller for a small forward. He plays about 29 minutes a game. He averages 7 points, 5 rebounds, and 2.5 assists. So the big thing is he's a 4-star recruit, number 27 nationally. So the talent is definitely there. I'm sure he's been working through the adjustment period. Going from high school ball to Big Ten balls, quite the adjustment. But he's got a good portion of the season under his belt now. So I think he's obviously a good talent. He's got the ability. They have another 4-star recruit, Jamie Kaiser Jr. He doesn't play quite as much. About 19 minutes a game. He doesn't score as much either, at about 4 points and 2 rebounds. So, but he's a great free throw shooter. He doesn't do a whole lot on the offensive end, but if he gets fouled, he's going to knock him down. He shoots 80% from the line. So a couple pretty talented young guys are going to get minutes on this team. It's a tough adjustment, but I'm sure they're just improving every game. So that's kind of who I'm looking out for.
The biggest thing to note amongst that supporting cast, you mentioned Deshaun Harris-Smith and Jamie Kaiser, both freshmen, highly ranked guys. Harris-Smith was the Virginia Gatorade Player of the Year, so obviously high notoriety there. And Kaiser was the 48th ranked nationally recruit, and he shoots a ton of threes. Doesn't make a ton of them, only shooting 23% from behind the arc. Harris-Smith only shooting 15% behind the arc. Elsewhere, Jordan Geronimo, a 6'6 junior, shooting 45% from the field, but another paltry 16% behind the arc. He's a transfer from Indiana, much better inside scorer than outside. But and then one other guy that I wrote down, Jahari Long, a 6'5 senior, averaging 5'2 and 2. He's shooting 42% from the field and only 31% from deep, and he's only eclipsed double digits once, scoring 15 against Coppin State. So again, outside of the big three that we talked about with Julian Reese, Donta Scott, and Jameer Young, the scoring is very, very light, especially from beyond the arc. So look to try to prevent those three, or at least pick one of those three that we're going to let score, and try to lock down the other two. Because offensively, Mike, this team is very, very bad. They're awful shooters. They're 341st nationally and last in the conference in three-point shooting. They're 190th nationally and 13th in the conference in two-point shooting. They turn it over a ton. They're last in the conference in turnover percentage. They're last in the conference in non-steal turnover percentage. They don't assist made baskets. They're second to last in the conference in assists per made field goal. But the strength that they do bring, which again, similar to what Ohio State brings to the table, is strength on the offensive glass. They are 54th nationally and third in conference in offensive rebounding percentage. And they do get to the stripe quite a bit, but they don't convert. They're 14th nationally and fifth in the conference in free throw attempts per field goal attempt, and 220th nationally and ninth in the conference in free throw make percentage. So expect them to play super physical, especially on the offensive glass, draw a lot of fouls where they can. But again, Mike, as you mentioned, defense is this team's strong suit.
Absolutely. And that shows, in their tempo as well. They play in the second slowest tempo in conference. That's overall tempo. On the offensive side, they're 10th in conference in tempo and 12th on defense. So they're going to grind out possessions, as is prone to see in Big Ten ball typically, pretty slow. But that's what they do. Like you said, beyond the big three, there's not a whole lot else. You mentioned the big Illinois win. If you look at the box score there, Jameer Young had 28 and Julian Reese had 20 for them. So nobody else had double digits. Scott and Geronimo had 9 apiece. But the scoring is really going to come from those two guys. So that's the big focus. Interested to see how we try to shut them down. And then as Fred had said in his post-game press conference, they do a lot of interesting stuff on defense. So it'll be interesting to see how we adjust to what they're showing us on the defensive end.
And you mentioned, Mike, they play very slow. You are very correct in that side of things. Tempo-wise, they play the 13th slowest rate in the conference. And they don't turn you over. They just beat you down, Mike. They're 73rd nationally and 8th in the conference in defensive turnover percentage, and 334th nationally and 12th in conference in defensive length of possession, meaning they drag you out as opposed to being fast. Their weakness, if you'd call it that, Mike, is their three-point defense. They're 191st nationally, but third in the conference in three-point defense. So that would lead you to believe that the entire conference doesn't really defend the three that well. But that's how teams choose to attack the Maryland Terrapins. They're defensively, they're 13th nationally and 5th in the conference in defensive three-point attempts per field goal attempt. And I think a lot of that is because they excel in blocking opponents, being 28th nationally and 3rd in conference in block percentage with a lot of the trees they have down there in Reese, Scott, and Geronimo. So a lot of height on this roster. I believe they're top 75 or top 80 in average height. The one thing I found that is very interesting, they are willing to play guys with 2 fouls. They are 87th nationally in 2 foul participation, and I think that lends to a lack of depth for Kevin Willard's Terrapin squad, especially amongst, again, as we mentioned, their scoring options. So, Mike, as we get into this one, Ken Pom projects a 71-70 Maryland win. Torvik a 71-70 Nebraska win. So projected spread, let's call it a pick. Mike, where are you leaning?
Yeah, before I do that, I just want to say that stat that you gave about 2 foul participation is actually really interesting. They're actually top in the conference in that. So like you said, probably is prone to them not being the deepest team. So I know we say it all the time, if you can get them in foul trouble early and go at them, because, players are going to be a little more passive if they have 2 fouls. It's always helpful if you get the other team in foul trouble, obviously. So just something interesting. Once again, as always, this is not financial advice, but I'm going to ride the high that is Nebraska basketball right now. Have always been one game at a time. Let's slow the roll, all this stuff, but I'm buying into the hype a bit. I think the team is really, really focused and locked in right now. As I said earlier, I think the team themselves are really hungry for a first road win just to prove that they can do it. They got a handful of days to rest here. It's not, a 3-day rest situation where they got to travel across the country. So plenty of rest. It's going to be tough, a Saturday game. It's probably going to be a good crowd there, but I like the boys to go on the road and win. This isn't a high scoring offense. They're probably going to do a pretty good job defensively, but I think it's going to stay true where you just got to get to 70 and get a win. I see the Huskers 71, the Terrapins 68.
Ooh, close one for Mike. Mike, I agree with a lot of everything you said. I'm also going to take Nebraska, although after this Iowa win, I almost flipped it, but I'm not going to do it. I'm going to stick to my guns. I'm going to take Nebraska. Again, to your point, I think the team seems very locked in. There wasn't a big celebration for the Ohio State win. There wasn't a celebration for the Northwestern win. I think the team is taking a much more business-like approach to the rest of this season after seeing, the high of Purdue and then the super mega low, not just in the team itself, but in the fan base, and how depressed we all got there for a span. So just trying to level the waters a little bit. I think they're doing a good job of that. I think there's a get-right game defensively. Maryland cannot shoot threes, and I think that's exactly what we're going to try to walk them into doing. As we've noted on the last episode, Nebraska last in the conference in defensive three-point attempts per field goal attempts. So we let teams fire it from deep, and Maryland struggles to do so. So I think they play right into our strength of help side defense along the baseline and doubling down low. This is not a good free throw shooting team, Mike. I think we have the free throw advantage, which can help in very close games. And at the end of the day, all Nebraska has heard is you can't win on the road. This team only protects PBA. They can't do anything when they're away from home. I think this team is really, really, really motivated to get this win on the road. So I'm going to take a little bit of a mental approach here and think that the Huskers are more locked in and want this one more than the Terrapins. I'm going to predict a 74-68 Nebraska win in this one. So that being said, Mike, let's get on the other side of this and get the listeners out of here.
You are listening to the Scarlet Shootaround podcast.
Well, Mike, you don't want to say that this is, necessarily a huge game, but this one will go a very, very, very long way in our fan base and national pundits, bracketologists, by proving to everybody that we can win a game in conference on the road.
I was going to say, I think the big key that you added there is in conference. Obviously, it's easy to forget about the big K-State road win we had earlier in the season when we haven't done one in conference. So this team knows they can win on the road. They've done it. They just haven't had it in conference play yet. And I think we're both in agreement that they're going to take care of business on the road here in College Park. After that, not looking forward to Wisconsin yet, but after they secure the dub this weekend, then we can start talking about what the Badgers bring to Lincoln. So excited for it. Can't wait. It's going to be, hopefully a quick couple days here till Saturday, and we can see how the boys perform.
So very excited for this one. Again, make sure you follow us on all of our social media, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube at Scarlet Shoot Pod. Make sure to especially follow us on Twitter as we have a very big growing forum of Nebraska basketball diehards. I think we're nearing 300 followers in only 2.5 months of doing this podcast. So really appreciate everybody following us on there. Obviously gives you an opportunity to not only get your opinion broadcasted onto the show, but also be entered into our sweatshirt giveaways. So make sure that you join us on Twitter. Mike, if you're watching on YouTube, advertising the sweatshirt. So if you'd like to get one of those, make sure you submit your responses to our What Did You Think tweet after every game. On Instagram at Scarlet Shoot Pod, we just post random pictures with whatever may be tied to the podcast itself, mainly of the sweatshirts and the marketing materials, things like that. And again, Mike runs the YouTube, so make sure that you follow us on YouTube if you want to get access to the video podcast. So without that being said, for Blake and co-host Mike, go Big Red.
Go Big Red, baby.